everything. Have you ever caught yourself staring at your to-do list, knowing exactly what you should be doing, yet doing anything but that? You tell yourself, everything. I'll start in 5 minutes, but those minutes turn into hours, and that quiet voice of guilt starts whispering, why can't I just do it? The truth is, everything. There's nothing wrong with your motivation. You're not lazy, broken, or undisciplined. Your brain is simply doing what it's designed to do, protecting you from discomfort. Everything. But what if you could rewire that design? What if you could trick your brain into taking action automatically, without forcing, without fighting, everything, without feeling drained every time you start something important? This audiobook is your roadmap to doing exactly that, transforming procrastination into unstoppable forward momentum. Everything, not through willpower, but through psychology, science, and strategy. You wake up one morning, determined that today will be different. You've got the list ready, the coffee's hot, everything, and you even feel that little spark of motivation. You sit down, open your laptop, and somehow you end up scrolling through your phone. Everything. Maybe you tell yourself you're just checking something, or you'll start in 5 minutes. Before you know it, 30 minutes have passed. The spark is gone, everything, and guilt creeps in again. You sigh, whisper under your breath, why do I keep doing this? The truth is, everything. Procrastination isn't a flaw in your character. It's a survival mechanism. Your brain isn't trying to ruin your plans, it's trying to protect you. Everything. The same system that kept your ancestors alive in dangerous jungles is the one holding you back from writing that report, going to the gym, or starting that business. Everything. It's not that you don't want to take action. It's that your brain perceives action as a threat. Not a physical one, but a psychological one. Everything. When you face a task that feels uncomfortable, maybe it's big, uncertain, or carries the risk of failure, your brain detects that discomfort as danger. Everything. It lights up the same fear circuits that used to keep early humans safe from predators. Back then, fear meant stop and survive. Today, everything. Fear means hesitate and delay. You don't run from lions anymore, but you do run from fear of judgment, rejection, or imperfection. And your brain doesn't really know the difference. Everything. Think about the last time you avoided something important. Maybe you had a project due and kept pushing it to the next day. Each time you delayed, everything, your brain rewarded you with a little bit of relief. That relief, that exhale of, I'll deal with it later, is dopamine. It's a small hit of comfort. Everything, tricking you into thinking avoidance is the right move. And so the cycle begins. Your brain learns that procrastination equals relief. The next time a similar task appears, everything, it repeats the same behavior automatically because it's wired now. That's how procrastination becomes a habit. Not because you lack discipline, everything, but because your brain has learned that waiting feels safer than starting. It's funny, isn't it? Everything. The very thing you're trying to avoid. The stress of doing the task grows bigger with every delay. What began as a small discomfort turns into a mountain of guilt. Everything. And then you criticize yourself for not climbing it sooner. The internal dialogue becomes brutal. Why can't I just do it? Everything. Everyone else seems to handle it fine. But here's the thing. Everyone struggles with this to some degree. Everything. The difference between those who overcome it and those who stay trapped is awareness. Awareness of how your brain works changes everything. Everything. Let's step inside that moment, that instant before you procrastinate. You're about to begin. Your brain senses resistance, and it sends a whisper. Everything. Maybe later. That's your subconscious trying to shield you from discomfort. What you have to realize is that resistance is a signal of growth, not danger. Everything. It's proof that you're stepping into something meaningful, something that matters. Picture your brain like a well, meaning but overprotective friend. It loves you, everything, but it doesn't want you to take risks. It doesn't want you to feel embarrassed, uncertain, or overwhelmed. So every time you try to take a leap, start a new habit, make a big decision, everything, or even sit down to focus, it gently tugs you back to safety. That tug is procrastination. Once you see it for what it is, you stop labeling yourself as lazy. Everything. You start recognizing that the resistance you feel is simply your brain's way of saying, I'm scared. Please make this feel safe. Here's a story. A young designer named Maya had a dream of launching her own creative agency. She was talented, ambitious, everything, and endlessly inspired. Yet every time she tried to build her website or reach out to clients, she found herself rearranging her desk or rewatching tutorials she'd already mastered. Everything. Weeks turned into months and her dreams sat on pause. When she finally dug deeper, she realized she wasn't procrastinating because she didn't care. She was terrified of being judged. Everything. What if people didn't like her work? What if she failed publicly? Her brain equated taking action with pain. Everything. Once she learned to see that fear for what it was, just an overreaction of a protective mind, she began to move forward. Slowly, imperfectly, but consistently. Within 6 months, everything. Her agency was live. The moment you understand that procrastination is emotional, not logical, everything changes. Everything. You stop trying to force yourself to act and start working with your brain instead of against it. Because willpower alone doesn't last. You can push yourself for a while, everything, but unless you rewire the emotion attached to action, you'll always revert to avoidance. So how do you begin to rewire it? Everything. Start by noticing the exact thought that appears before you procrastinate. It might sound like, everything. I don't feel ready yet, or this is too hard right now. That's your brain's signal of discomfort. Don't argue with it. Acknowledge it. Then gently tell yourself, everything. I don't have to feel ready to begin. I just need to start small. This simple reframe tells your brain that starting isn't dangerous. It's manageable. Everything. You can also use what psychologists call the 10-second rule. The idea is to trick your brain's hesitation mechanism. The next time you feel resistance, everything, count backward from 10 and take immediate physical action before you reach 1. Stand up, open the file, write the first sentence. Anything that breaks the pattern. Everything. The countdown interrupts the limbic system, the emotional part of your brain, and activates your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making. Everything. You bypass hesitation and build momentum before the excuses even form. Another powerful trick is to lower the entry barrier. Your brain hates massive, undefined tasks. Everything. Write a book. Sounds terrifying. Write 1 paragraph. Feels doable. The smaller the step, the safer it feels. And once you begin, the fear dissolves. Action generates clarity. Everything. Every small win rewires the brain, replacing avoidance with accomplishment. This is how momentum is built, not in giant leaps, but in micro movements. Everything. If you look at high performers, athletes, entrepreneurs, creators, they don't always feel motivated. They've simply learned to act without negotiating with their feelings. Everything. They've trained their brains to interpret discomfort not as danger, but as a cue to lean in. The more they do it, the easier it becomes. The neural pathways of resistance weaken. Everything. While the circuits of action strengthen. Over time, they don't have to fight procrastination. It simply loses its power. There's a deeper layer to this too. Everything. Procrastination often hides something more emotional. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of not being enough. When you procrastinate everything, you're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding what the task represents. That's why even simple things can trigger big resistance. A phone call might represent potential rejection. Everything. A blank page might represent imperfection. The key is compassion. You can't bully your way out of procrastination. You have to soothe the fear underneath it. Everything. When you start treating your mind with understanding instead of judgment, you create safety. And when your brain feels safe, it stops fighting you. Everything. One of the simplest ways to build that safety is through self-talk. The next time you notice yourself hesitating, try saying, "It's okay to feel uncomfortable." Everything. "I can handle this." That small statement calms your nervous system. You're signaling to your brain that the discomfort isn't life-threatening. It's just part of growth. Everything. Another technique that works beautifully is visualization. Before you begin a task, close your eyes and imagine the feeling of finishing it. Feel the relief, the pride, everything, the lightness of being done. Your brain starts associating action with reward instead of pain. Everything. It shifts the emotional equation from, "This is scary," to, "This feels good." And when something feels good, you naturally want to repeat it. You see, everything. Procrastination isn't a motivation problem. It's an emotion regulation problem. Your ability to act depends on how well you can manage your emotional response to discomfort. Everything. The better you get at soothing that initial fear, the faster you can move forward. You're not trying to eliminate resistance. You're learning to dance with it. Every time you start, everything, even for a minute, you're teaching your brain a new story, that action is safe, that growth is rewarding, that you're capable. And soon, those old patterns of hesitation begin to fade. Everything. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles to start, and you begin to see yourself as someone who shows up, no matter what. Everything. So the next time you find yourself caught in that tug of war, the urge to act versus the pull to delay, pause for a moment. Smile, even. Recognize what's really happening. Everything. Your brain is trying to protect you. Then thank it gently and move anyway. Because action is not the enemy of fear. It's the cure for it. And once your brain learns that truth, everything, procrastination begins to lose its power, one brave, imperfect step at a time. You've probably heard the saying, everything. You can't fight your own mind. But what if you didn't have to fight it? What if, instead, you could train it to work with you, to take action automatically, everything, without needing that constant mental tug of war? Because here's the truth: your brain isn't your enemy. It's a loyal, everything, ancient machine doing exactly what it was built to do: keep you safe, comfortable, and alive. The problem is, it was designed for survival, not success. And in today's world, everything, comfort is the new danger. Think about it. When you procrastinate, your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's protecting you from the discomfort of uncertainty, failure, judgment, everything, or even effort itself. It says, let's just scroll for a bit, let's clean the desk first, let's do it later. That voice isn't weakness, it's instinct, everything. But instinct can be rewired. The same way you once trained your brain to associate your phone's buzz with excitement, you can train it to associate starting with satisfaction, everything. That's how you outsmart the comfort zone. Let's begin with something small, micro, commitments. Have you ever noticed that the hardest part of any task isn't doing it? It's starting, everything. You can spend hours thinking about going to the gym, and that thought alone drains more energy than the workout ever would. Micro commitments are your secret weapon against that resistance, everything. Instead of telling yourself, I have to go to the gym for an hour, tell yourself, I'll just put on my shoes, or everything. I'll open the document and write one sentence. That's it. You're not committing to the full marathon, just the first step. Because here's what happens once you start, everything. Momentum takes over. The brain shifts from protection mode to progression mode. Dopamine starts to release as soon as you make progress, not when you finish. Everything. That first action, however tiny, creates a chemical spark that says, this feels good, let's keep going. You've tricked your brain into doing exactly what it was resisting, everything, and it rewards you for it. It's like fooling a guard into letting you pass by smiling and waving as if you belong there. You bypass the resistance entirely, everything. There's a story I often tell about a young designer named Marcus. For years, he dreamed of starting his own freelance business, but he always froze at the idea of putting himself out there, everything. He'd overthink his portfolio, question whether clients would like his work, and end up scrolling job listings instead. One day, he decided to try something different, everything. Instead of planning the perfect business launch, he made a micro commitment. He would send one message to one potential client. Just one. It took him less than 3 minutes. The next day, everything. He sent another. Within 2 weeks, he had 3 clients, and within 6 months, he quit his job. What changed wasn't his talent. It was his relationship with discomfort. Everything. He stopped seeing action as a massive leap and started seeing it as a series of tiny, almost laughably easy steps. And his brain stopped fighting him. Everything. That's the beauty of micro commitments. They remove the emotional weight that makes action feel threatening. Now, once you've started mastering small actions, everything, the next level is identity shifting. Because true change doesn't last when it's based on willpower. It lasts when it's built on who you believe you are. You see, everything, your brain is always trying to stay consistent with your identity. Everything. If you think of yourself as someone who procrastinates, your brain will subconsciously make sure that belief stays true. Everything. It's not trying to sabotage you. It's just trying to stay coherent. So here's the tricky: instead of trying to force new behavior, focus on becoming a new identity. Everything. If you want to stop procrastinating on your goals, stop identifying as a procrastinator. Start identifying as person who takes action. It might sound subtle, everything, but it's powerful. Every time you make a small move forward, say to yourself, that's what an action taker does. Every time you finish something early, tell yourself, everything. This is who I am now. This may seem simple, even silly, but it's how all transformation works. Your brain doesn't change through information, everything. It changes through repetition and identity alignment. The more you behave like your desired self, the faster your mind updates its story about who you are. Before long, everything. Taking action stops feeling like a battle. It feels natural. Let's take an example. Imagine a person who has always struggled to wake up early. They've tried alarms, schedules, everything, motivation videos, nothing sticks. But then, instead of forcing it, they shift their identity. They start saying to themselves, everything. I'm the kind of person who respects my mornings. For the first few days, it's awkward. They don't fully believe it yet. But each time they wake up, even 5 minutes earlier, everything, they reinforce that identity. After a few weeks, they're not trying anymore. They just are that kind of person. That's the invisible switch of identity. Your actions follow your story, everything, not the other way around. Change your story and your behavior starts to rewrite itself. Now let's talk about something even deeper. Emotional reframing, everything. This is where most people get stuck because they believe they have to feel motivated to act. But emotion doesn't have to come before action. It can come after. The moment you act, everything, your emotions begin to shift to match your behavior. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll be waiting forever. Everything. Emotional reframing means taking the same feeling that once triggered avoidance, fear, boredom, self-doubt, and turning it into a signal for movement. Instead of saying, I feel anxious, everything, so I'll wait, say, I feel anxious, so I'll start. That single reframe rewires your emotional meaning. Your brain learns that fear isn't danger. It's energy, everything. Discomfort isn't a stop sign. It's a green light that says you're stepping into growth. Think about a time when you almost didn't do something because of fear. Maybe a presentation, everything, a conversation or a new opportunity. But when you finally did it, you realized it wasn't nearly as bad as you imagined. Everything. That moment is proof that the emotion was never the enemy. It was just the gatekeeper to progress. The fear you feel before doing something new isn't a warning. Everything. It's the price of admission to your next level. There's a neuroscientific reason this works. Everything. The brain's amygdala, your emotional alarm system, activates the same way whether you're facing a tiger or giving a speech. Everything. But your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, has the power to reinterpret that alarm. When you act in spite of fear, you teach your brain that the signal was safe. Everything. Over time, the alarm weakens, and what once felt impossible begins to feel effortless. You can use this technique in daily life. The next time you hesitate, say to yourself, everything. This feeling means go. It might sound counterintuitive at first, but repetition rewires your response. Soon, discomfort becomes your cue for courage. Here's another powerful exercise. Everything. Whenever you catch yourself overthinking, imagine your thoughts as clouds floating across the sky. You don't need to stop them. You just need to act while they pass. Everything. Because your thoughts are temporary, but your decisions create permanence. One action, even a small one, changes your state faster than any positive thinking ever could. Everything. Let me share a short story that captures this beautifully. A woman named Tara wanted to start running again after years of inactivity. But every morning, everything, her mind would tell her the same things. You're tired. It's too cold. You can do it tomorrow. One morning, instead of arguing with herself, she simply said, everything. I'll run for 2 minutes. She put on her shoes, stepped outside, and started running. 2 minutes turned into 10, then 20. When she came home, she smiled and said, everything. I tricked myself, but it worked. She didn't overcome procrastination through pressure. She used psychology. She didn't fight her comfort zone. She outsmarted it. Everything. And that's what this chapter is about. It's about building a new partnership with your brain, one where you lead gently but firmly. You learn to see discomfort as a sign of growth, everything, not danger. You learn to make starting so small that your mind can't say no. And you learn to anchor your identity in action, not hesitation. Each time you follow through, everything, even in the smallest way, you carve a new neural pathway. You're literally reshaping the wiring of your brain to favor progress over protection. Everything. That's not metaphorical, that's neuroscience. The more you do it, the stronger that circuit becomes until eventually, everything. Taking action is no longer something you push yourself to do. It's something you're pulled toward. And when that happens, something magical shifts. Everything. You no longer see action as effort. You see it as alignment. You stop asking, how can I motivate myself? And start asking, everything. What would the person I want to become do right now? That's the ultimate trick. You don't need to fight your brain. You just need to teach it a new way to feel safe while growing. Everything. And once it learns that, resistance begins to fade. What used to feel impossible becomes automatic. The comfort zone doesn't disappear. It just expands. Everything. until progress itself becomes your new normal. That's when you know you've started to truly rewire your mind. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Everything. Once you start moving, everything gets easier. It's like pushing a heavy car that's stuck on a hill. The hardest part is getting it to budge that first inch. Everything. But once the wheels start turning, a strange thing happens. Your effort suddenly feels lighter, your steps quicker, your focus sharper. That's what momentum feels like in life. Everything. It's the invisible energy that turns small, almost unnoticeable wins into unstoppable progress. And yet, so few people ever harness it consciously. They wait for big wins, big breaks, everything, big opportunities, thinking that success will come from one dramatic leap. But the truth is, everything. The people who achieve extraordinary results are simply the ones who learned how to make small progress every day until that progress became a tidal wave. Imagine this. Everything. You wake up one morning determined to finally start that side project you've been postponing for months. You sit down, open your laptop, and work for 20 minutes. Everything. That's it, just 20. It doesn't feel like much. You might even feel a bit silly celebrating it. But here's where most people miss the magic. Everything. That tiny burst of effort triggers something inside your brain, a hit of dopamine. Dopamine isn't just a pleasure chemical, it's the motivation molecule. It tells your brain, everything. This feels good. Do it again. And that's how the momentum loop begins. When you finish something, even something small, your brain rewards you. Everything. It associates the act of progress with a small sense of satisfaction. That satisfaction builds emotional momentum. You're slightly more likely to start again tomorrow. And if you do everything, the next day gets even easier. Before you know it, what started as a 20-minute session turns into an hour, then two, then a consistent daily routine. That's the power of the loop. Everything. Progress creates motivation, and motivation creates more progress. The problem is, most of us do the opposite. We sit still, waiting to feel motivated before we act. Everything. We want the energy before we move. But action is what creates energy. Think about a cold car engine. It doesn't start warm, it gets warm because it started. Everything. That's how motivation really works. It's not a prerequisite to action, it's a result of action. Once you understand that, you'll stop waiting for the right mood, the perfect moment, everything, or the burst of inspiration. You'll realize that the key to unstoppable motivation is simply getting yourself to start. Here's a real life story that brings this to life. Everything. I once spoke with a young graphic designer who had been dreaming about launching his freelance business for years. He'd done all the research, watched tutorials, everything, even designed his logo. But he hadn't taken any real clients. He said he was waiting to feel ready. So I gave him one simple assignment: find one client, no matter how small, everything, and design one logo this week. That's it. A few days later, he emailed me saying he'd completed the project. He sounded different, confident, alive, unstoppable. Within a month, everything, he had 4 new clients. Within 6 months, he quit his job. All it took was one small win to break the resistance and trigger his momentum loop. Momentum doesn't come from massive goals. Everything. It comes from movement. It's about shrinking the size of your starting point so much that your brain can't say no. This is where the art of micro commitments comes in. Instead of saying, everything, I'll write for 2 hours, tell yourself, I'll open my document and write 1 sentence. Instead of promising yourself an intense hour-long workout, everything, commit to putting on your running shoes. Why? Because your brain resists the idea of big effort, not the effort itself. The hardest part is starting. Once you start, your psychology shifts. Everything. You've already invested energy, so your brain wants to finish what it started. That's called the Zeigarnik effect, our natural tendency to complete what's unfinished. Everything. Combine that with a burst of dopamine from even a small step, and you've just created a psychological engine that feeds on itself. Everything. There's a reason high performers guard their momentum like treasure. They understand that consistency beats intensity. A single day of extreme effort can't compete with a week of steady. Everything. Modest progress. You don't build fitness by going to the gym for 6 hours once. You build it by showing up for 30 minutes every day. The same is true for writing, business, learning, everything, relationships, everything. Momentum compounds the same way interest does in a bank account. Each deposit, no matter how small, builds on the last until you reach exponential growth. Everything. But here's the emotional secret behind it: progress feels better than procrastination. We often think avoiding a task will make us feel relief, but that's a lie our comfort zone tells us. Everything. Avoidance gives you short-term ease but long-term guilt. Action, on the other hand, gives you short-term discomfort but long-term pride. Everything. That feeling when you've accomplished something, even a tiny something, is emotional fuel. The more you taste it, the more your brain starts craving it. Everything. You begin chasing that feeling of forward motion. You start associating effort with satisfaction instead of dread. That's when the shift happens. You stop asking, everything, how do I make myself do this? And start saying, I can't wait to keep going. Now, to make this practical, you can design your own momentum loop using 3 simple steps. Cue, everything, action, reward. It's the same loop used in habit formation, but here you're using it consciously to build motivation. Everything. Start by creating a small cue. Something that tells your brain it's time to start. It could be as simple as sitting at your desk, opening your notebook, everything, or turning on a specific playlist. That cue should immediately trigger your action, something small and easy to begin. Once you've done that, give yourself a quick reward, everything. That could be a check mark on your list, a mental was, or even a few seconds of gratitude. Over time, your brain will link that cue to a sense of satisfaction, everything, and the loop will start running automatically. For example, a writer I once coached used a candle as her cue. Every time she sat down to write, she'd light it, everything. That simple ritual became her brain's signal that it was time to create. Eventually, the smell of that candle alone put her in a state of focus, everything. The candle became part of her momentum loop, cue, action, reward. She didn't have to push herself anymore. Her brain started working for her, not against her. Everything. Momentum also thrives on visible progress. Your brain loves to see evidence that your effort is paying off. That's why tracking matters. Whether it's crossing off tasks on a list, everything, logging workouts, or marking streaks on a calendar, each visible sign of progress reinforces your motivation. It's a visual dopamine trigger. You're teaching your brain, look, everything, I'm winning. And once it starts seeing those wins pile up, quitting becomes emotionally painful. You've built too much to stop. But momentum can't survive in chaos, everything. If your environment constantly throws distractions your way, the loop breaks before it starts. That's why your environment must support your focus. Keep your workspace clean, everything. Minimize decision fatigue, and prepare cues that make starting automatic. Don't rely on willpower. Design your surroundings so that action becomes the path of least resistance. Everything. Here's something few people realize: momentum isn't just about productivity. It's about identity. When you build momentum, everything, you're training your brain to see yourself differently. As someone who takes action, every time you follow through, you strengthen that identity, everything. An identity-driven behavior is the most powerful kind. It's no longer about forcing yourself to act, it's about acting in alignment with who you believe you are, everything. You're no longer the person who tries to be consistent. You are consistent. There will still be days when you stumble, when energy dips or life throws curveballs, everything. But once you've experienced momentum, you'll know how to get back on track quickly. You'll understand that losing one day isn't failure. It's just a pause, everything. The key is to never let 2 pauses stack up. Restart immediately, no matter how small the restart is. Even a 5-minute win is enough to reignite the loop. So, everything. The next time you catch yourself overthinking, waiting for the right moment, or drowning in the illusion of perfection, remind yourself of this simple truth: action creates motivation. Everything, not the other way around. Take one small step. Let that step feed your confidence. Let your confidence fuel your next step. Soon, you'll find yourself moving effortlessly. Everything. Riding the wave of your own momentum. That's when everything begins to change, not in giant leaps, but in small, consistent wins that compound into something extraordinary. Everything. Momentum isn't luck. It's a system, a rhythm your brain learns to dance to once you start the music. The hardest part is pressing play. After that, the beat carries you, everything. There's a moment, right before you start something important, when your body hesitates. You know exactly what needs to be done. The email you've been avoiding, everything. The workout you keep pushing to tomorrow, the big idea that's been collecting dust in your mind. But something invisible pulls you back. That tightness in your chest, everything. That small wave of resistance, that whisper that says, not now. Later, it feels logical in the moment, almost justified. But what's really happening is not laziness, it's emotion. Everything. Your brain isn't fighting the task. It's fighting the feeling attached to it. And this is where everything changes once you understand the emotion switch, everything. Most people believe they need to feel motivated before they act. They wait for that perfect spark of inspiration, the mood, the energy, the right time. But motivation, everything, as most experience it, is a fleeting emotion. It's unreliable, inconsistent, and completely dependent on how you feel in that moment. The truth is, everything. Waiting to feel ready is one of the most effective ways to stay stuck, because the feeling of readiness rarely arrives first. Action doesn't follow motivation. Motivation follows action, everything. Once you understand this reversal, you stop waiting for your emotions to give you permission. You start using your emotions as fuel instead of friction. Let's start with a simple story, everything. Imagine someone named Sarah. She's a graphic designer with a side dream. She wants to build her own brand. She's talented, creative, and ambitious, but every night after work, everything, she tells herself the same thing. I'll start tomorrow when I'm in the mood. But tomorrow comes, and that spark never arrives. One night, she decides to test something different, everything. Instead of fighting the feeling, she leans into it. She admits to herself, okay, I don't feel like doing this right now, everything. But what if I start for just 5 minutes? She opens her laptop, sets a timer, and begins sketching ideas. 5 minutes pass, then 10, then an hour. Before she knows it, she's in flow, everything. The secret wasn't motivation. It was momentum. This is the essence of the emotion switch. Understanding that emotion is not the enemy of action, it's the ignition, everything. Every emotion you experience, frustration, boredom, excitement, even fear, is energy, it's raw power. Most people never learn how to channel it, everything. They try to suppress or escape uncomfortable feelings instead of using them. But if you can learn to reframe your emotions, to see them as signals rather than stop signs, everything, you unlock an entirely new level of control over your life. The first tool to master this is emotional anchoring, everything. Think of your brain like a jukebox. You can choose which track to play by recalling the right emotional cue. For example, everything. Think back to a time you felt unstoppable. Maybe it was finishing a project you thought you couldn't handle, or speaking up when it scared you, everything, or achieving something no one expected you to. Close your eyes and remember what that moment felt like in your body. The warmth, the confidence, the certainty. That feeling is not gone, everything. It's stored in your nervous system. When you consciously replay it, your body begins to recreate that state in the present moment, everything. That's anchoring, using memory as emotional technology. Athletes do this instinctively. Before a game, they replay highlight reels in their minds, everything. Listen to music that triggers confidence, or perform rituals that link their mind to a peak emotional state, everything. They're not getting hyped. They're conditioning their emotional response. You can do the same. Before starting a task you've been resisting, everything, take 30 seconds to tap into an emotion that aligns with action. If you want to feel calm before a presentation, remember a time you felt capable, everything. If you want to feel powerful before writing that proposal, remember a time you succeeded against the odds. You're teaching your brain to associate doing with feeling good, everything, not anxious or pressured. Visualization is another powerful switch, but forget the cliché image of sitting cross-legged imagining success, everything. Visualization isn't just about seeing the outcome. It's about feeling the process. If you imagine yourself effortlessly working through the steps, everything, your brain starts to accept that image as reality. Studies show that when you visualize performing an action vividly, everything, your brain lights up in nearly the same way as if you were physically doing it. That means you can pre-wire your emotions toward action before you even begin, everything. Picture yourself opening the document, typing the first sentence, or walking into that gym. Feel your body in that moment. The rhythm of movement, the focus, the satisfaction afterward, everything. When you imagine this repeatedly, your mind begins to crave the real experience. But even with these tools, everything. There's one simple method that cuts through resistance faster than anything else, the 5-minute rule. The idea is simple: commit to doing something for just 5 minutes, everything. No matter how big the task feels, no matter how unmotivated you are, tell yourself, I'll do it for 5 minutes. What happens next is fascinating. Once you start everything, your brain shifts from avoidance to engagement. The hardest part isn't doing the work, it's starting it. When you take that small step, your emotions follow your motion, everything. You flip the switch from hesitation to momentum. Neuroscience explains why this works. When you're about to start a task that feels uncomfortable or uncertain, everything, the amygdala, the part of your brain that detects threat, fires up. It releases stress signals that tell your body, avoid this. But once you begin, everything, the prefrontal cortex, the logical, planning part of your brain, takes over and calms that emotional alarm. The fear quiets down because your brain realizes, oh, this isn't dangerous. Everything. We're just doing it. That's why 5 minutes is so powerful. It bypasses the fear circuit and engages the action circuit. Now, everything. Think about how many times you've let an emotion dictate your decisions. You felt tired, so you didn't go to the gym. You felt anxious, so you avoided that call. You felt uninspired, everything, so you delayed the work. The truth is, emotion is a signal, not a sentence. Feeling tired doesn't mean you're incapable. It just means your body wants comfort, everything. Feeling anxious doesn't mean you should stop. It means your brain is alerting you to potential growth. If you stop interpreting every uncomfortable emotion as a warning, everything, and instead see it as energy waiting for direction, you'll begin to move even when the emotion doesn't match the goal. Here's the shift: stop asking, everything, how do I feel about doing this? And start asking, what emotion would help me do this? That one question transforms everything, everything. You start choosing your emotional state instead of reacting to it. For example, before sitting down to work, everything, you might choose curiosity over anxiety. Let's see what I can create. Before making a tough call, everything, you might choose courage over hesitation. I've done harder things before. By consciously choosing emotions that align with action, everything, you build emotional momentum that carries you forward. One of the most liberating realizations is that emotions are not static, they're fluid. They change with motion, everything. That's why movement itself is medicine. Ever notice how taking a short walk clears your mind? Or how cleaning your space suddenly sparks motivation to do more? Everything. Your body and emotions are linked. If you can't think your way out of a feeling, move your way out of it. Stand up, breathe deeply, stretch, everything. Take one physical action toward your goal, and you'll notice your emotions begin to shift in real time. This is what the emotion switch truly represents, everything, reclaiming the driver's seat of your emotional life. You stop being at the mercy of moods and start being the engineer of them. You realize that your feelings are not obstacles to overcome, everything, but tools to master. And once you learn to channel them intentionally, procrastination begins to lose its grip. Because how can resistance win when you know how to redirect it into momentum? Everything. So next time you catch yourself waiting for the right feeling, pause and remember this: you don't need to feel ready. You need to feel something, and then use it, everything. Whether it's frustration, boredom, excitement, or even fear, let that energy move through you, not stop you. Start with 5 minutes, anchor into your best state, visualize your success, everything, and keep your body in motion. The emotion will follow the action every single time. When you master this, motivation becomes irrelevant, everything. Because you'll no longer rely on emotion to decide your next move. You'll use it as fuel. And once you learn to do that, everything, your emotions stop being your excuses and start becoming your greatest source of power. Waking up one morning and realizing that you no longer need to push yourself to take action. Everything, you simply do it. The things that once felt heavy, the projects you used to delay, the goals that felt intimidating, all of them now sit on your path like natural next steps. Everything. Not impossible mountains. That's what it means to become action-oriented for life. It's not about learning 100 tricks to fight procrastination, everything. It's about transforming who you are at your core, about shifting from someone who tries to act into someone who simply does. For most of your life, everything, you've been told that the secret to success is discipline. Just work harder. Just focus more. But if it were that simple, you wouldn't be listening to this audiobook. Everything. The truth is, people don't fail because they lack discipline. They fail because they haven't built an identity that supports the actions they want to take. Everything. It's like trying to run marathon software on outdated hardware. The system can't handle it. To live as an action-oriented person, you have to upgrade the operating system of your mind. Everything. Think of identity as your brain's autopilot. Whatever you believe yourself to be, your actions will follow. If you believe you're someone who's inconsistent, everything, you'll subconsciously look for evidence to prove it. If you tell yourself you're a procrastinator, your brain will ensure that label stays true. But if you start believing everything, deeply and repeatedly, I'm the kind of person who takes action immediately. Your behavior begins to change in ways that feel almost effortless. It's not about forcing yourself, everything. It's about aligning with who you already know you can be. A story I often share is about a man named Eric. For years, Eric struggled with procrastination. He was bright, talented, everything, and full of ideas, but he had a bad habit of waiting for the perfect time to start. His projects would pile up, his confidence would dip, and he'd beat himself up for not doing enough, everything. One day, a mentor asked him a simple question. If you were already the version of yourself who takes massive action, what would you do right now? That question hit him hard, everything. Without overthinking, he opened his laptop and began working. Just 20 minutes later, he felt a sense of pride and energy he hadn't felt in months. Everything. The secret wasn't motivation. It was identity. He acted as if he already was the person he wanted to become. Over time, that as if became reality. Everything. When you stop identifying as a procrastinator and start identifying as an action taker, you stop waiting for motivation. Everything. You no longer negotiate with yourself every time something uncomfortable appears on your list. You simply move, because that's what people like you do. Everything. The first step to this transformation is to notice the language you use with yourself. Pay attention to how you describe your habits, your abilities, your consistency. Everything. Phrases like, "I'm just not motivated," or "I've always been like this," are not harmless. They're identity statements, small seeds that grow into the roots of your behavior. Everything. Start replacing them with deliberate, empowering language. Say to yourself, everything. I'm someone who moves quickly on what matters. Or, I take action even when it's uncomfortable. The brain learns through repetition. Everything. And your words are instructions to your subconscious. You might wonder, but how do I make it stick? That's where environment comes in. Everything. Action-oriented people design their surroundings to support motion, not delay. They don't rely on willpower, they rely on structure. If you want to exercise every morning, everything. Put your shoes where you'll trip over them when you wake up. If you want to start writing, open your document before you go to bed so it's waiting for you. Everything. Small design choices remove the friction that feeds procrastination. Every time you reduce friction, you increase the odds of action. Everything. There's also a powerful principle called activation energy, the amount of energy it takes to start something. The higher the activation energy, the harder it is to begin. Everything. But the moment you start, your brain rewards you with dopamine, giving you a surge of energy to continue. That's why starting is everything. You don't need to finish the whole project. Everything. You just need to begin. Set the timer for 5 minutes. Tell yourself you'll just outline the first step. Once your brain feels the momentum, it will want to keep going. Remember, everything. Action is emotional, not logical. You can't think your way into action. You must feel your way into it. That's why it's so important to attach emotion to your goals. Ask yourself, everything. Why does this matter to me? Who will benefit when I follow through? What kind of person will I become if I see this through? When your heart is engaged, everything, your brain will follow. Emotion gives energy to intention. Let's take another example. A young woman named Laura always wanted to start a podcast. She had ideas, equipment, everything, even a name, but she kept putting it off. She told herself she wasn't ready, that she needed more time, more research. One day. Everything. She realized that her fear wasn't about failure. It was about visibility. She was afraid of being judged. So instead of avoiding that fear, she decided to confront it emotionally. Everything. She recorded her first episode, shaky voice and all, and uploaded it the same day. That single act changed everything. The fear didn't disappear. She just stopped waiting for it to go away. Everything. Over time, taking action became her therapy. By her 10th episode, she was no longer trying to be confident. She simply was. That's the power of emotional alignment. Everything. When your reason is bigger than your resistance, action becomes automatic. Another key to becoming action-oriented is mastering self-trust. Procrastination often hides a deeper wound, doubt. Everything. You hesitate because you don't fully trust yourself to follow through or handle discomfort. Every time you break a promise to yourself, even a small one, everything, your subconscious registers that betrayal. But here's the good news: trust can be rebuilt the same way it's lost, one promise at a time. Start small. Everything. Promise yourself you'll work for 10 minutes. Do it. Then promise to send that one message. Do it. Every time you keep a promise, your brain learns everything. I can rely on me. Confidence isn't built from success, it's built from consistency. It's also important to celebrate progress, not just completion. Everything. Your brain thrives on acknowledgement. Every time you reward yourself for showing up, you reinforce the identity of someone who takes action. Smile when you follow through. Everything. Keep a progress journal. Write down one action you took today, no matter how small. Over time, these small celebrations accumulate into self-belief. Everything. You might notice that as you take more consistent action, your energy changes. You walk differently. You speak with more certainty. You stop waiting for the right time. Everything. Because you realize the right time is whenever you decide it is. And that decision, made again and again, builds a life of forward motion. Everything. There's a phrase that captures this shift perfectly. Motion over emotion. When you move, even a little, your feelings begin to align. You stop needing motivation before starting. Everything. Because you understand that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Each day, you train your brain to associate movement with relief, completion, pride. Soon. Everything. You'll notice that procrastination feels heavier than action. That's when you've truly rewired yourself. Imagine the ripple effect this has on your life. Everything. You start finishing what you start. Opportunities open because you're consistent. People trust you because you deliver. Your confidence expands because you prove to yourself, everything, again and again, that you're capable. Taking action becomes part of your identity, like breathing. You no longer ask, how do I get motivated? Instead, you ask, everything. What's my next step? And that single shift from thinking to doing changes everything. Becoming action-oriented for life isn't about perfection. Everything. You'll still have days when resistance whispers, when your energy dips, when fear tries to creep back in. But you'll handle those moments differently. Instead of freezing, you'll move. Everything. Instead of overanalyzing, you'll begin. You'll know that action itself is the cure. And once you've experienced the freedom that comes from living this way, there's no going back. Everything. Because at your core, you are not a procrastinator. You are a creator. You are someone designed for momentum, progress, and growth. All you've done in this journey is remember that truth. Everything. The end of procrastination isn't a finish line. It's a way of living. It's waking up every day knowing that you have the power to move, to build, everything, to create, without waiting for permission from your mood or your fear. This is who you are now, someone who acts, someone who finishes, someone who lives with momentum. Everything. And once you see yourself this way, your life begins to move at the speed of your decisions.